Hey guys. Yesterday, or for our last class, we talked about capitalism, and I introduced you guys to Adam Smith, and introduced you guys to all the pros of capitalism, how sort of the invisible hand, and how if the government does not regulate anything, profit and businesses grow, and all of that's amazing and wonderful. And sure, that is true. Capitalism is really an interesting economic system. But we also have to talk about what capitalism does to society, okay? It's not just capitalism, it's the revolutions overall. So, period three, because of the Industrial Revolution, undergoes a lot of major societal changes. And so today we're going to introduce those societal changes. Not all of them are good, some of them are very, very bad, which you might be able to guess which one in particular based on the screen that I'm showing you. Why, yes, child labor. Okay, so let's talk about that, and let's just talk about how society changes because of the Industrial Revolution. All right, guys, so still in period three, still in unit five, although we're slowly ending our unit five. We're going to get to unit six probably after Christmas. I got one meme of the day for you. Not so great because it is very hard to find a meme about capitalism that is okay to use in the classroom. Some date reminders. You don't have any writing or exams this week. So this is kind of just a lecture week. So lots of notes will be taken. Today, as I said, we're going to be doing changes in society due to the Industrial Revolution. And as I said, they're not all good. They're not all bad either. And of course, you will have some in-class work. So email me if you're coming to this video because you missed class. So here's my meme. Any one of you who's ever played Monopoly knows how evil that game really can be. And yes, the game was created to show how bad capitalism is, except most of us play it and enjoy it just simply for the sake of enjoying Monopoly. Okay, guys, so you don't have to write this down. This should be straight from your lecture from our last class, but I did want to give you guys a reminder of what we talked about. So we talked about a guy named Adam Smith, a British economist who wrote The Wealth of Nations. And basically he stated that mercantilism is bad. He also stated that if the government stays out, okay, they leave alone all sorts of businesses and profits, that the economy will grow and more people will be able to get a profit, okay, and build these factories. So essentially what Adam Smith was talking about was this concept of laissez-faire, which is a French word for to leave alone. So again, the government leaves alone society and profits grow on their own. And Adam Smith argued for the idea of the invisible hand, in which this invisible hand is kind of the supply and demand, what people want, people will get, simply because, you know, if there is a supply, if there is a demand for something, there will be other people who come in and provide the supply of it, okay? So again, no government regulation, no government coming in and telling anyone what to do. And that is what capitalism is. And capitalism seems like a really great idea. And what you see is in these maritime-based empires, like Great Britain and France, governments adopt wholesale capitalism. All right, governments stay out of the creation of factories, the creation of businesses. They don't regulate anything because this sort of idea of this invisible hand actually kind of works, okay? But capitalism and the Industrial Revolution kind of going hand in hand together creates some new effects on society, things that we see that we really didn't see in period one or period two. And so we're going to talk about those today. So the first thing we see is the emergence of new social classes. So you probably remember in all of my videos or all of my lectures to you, me doing the nice little triangle and talking about, you know, the kings at the top and the peasants and the farmers at the bottom, okay? It's pretty standard throughout period one and period two. You have these social structures. You see them in Europe, you see them in Asia, you see them in South Asia, you see them everywhere, in which you have this powerful upper class, this ruling class, and then you have people at the bottom, this underclass, usually made up of peasants and teachers, farmers, people who just aren't part of this ruling class. Well, The truth is, guys, is the Industrial Revolution is going to change that. Okay. No longer are we going to get this sort of triangle based on two very distinct upper and lower classes. Now we're going to get a third class. Okay. One right in the middle. So what you'll see is a rising middle class. Okay. And it's not just, there's not just three classes here. There's also, very wealthy, sort of like somewhat wealthy, upper middle class, lower middle class, and all different classes of peasants. But I think this is just an easy structure to look at. So what we'll see is society changes. We have an upper class, a middle class, and then we rename the lower class the working class. And these terms are still used today. So if you ever turn on the news, you might hear, Fox News or CNN refer to the middle class, the solid middle class, or the working class, because these terms of society are still used today. Okay. Now, the middle class that's going to be created in the Industrial Revolution, this is going to be a group of people with skilled labor. So as we said, when we talked about the Industrial Revolution, most of the people working in those factories, most of the people kind of employed on those machines creating, mass producing goods, they're going to be unskilled labor. Okay. So they're not going to be paid very well. They're going to be part of this new working class. Okay. But in order for these factories to survive, in order for factories that you need to have good management, you need to have people who can work with these lower class workers. You also need to have people who can fix the machines if they're broken. And so this group of people will be skilled laborers. And these group of people are going to make up this new middle class. Okay. Now the upper class will be the factory owners. Okay. So in short, you have the wealthy business owners, the factory owners, the guys that own all the mills. You have their employees, the managers, the machine fixers, okay? And then at the very bottom, the working class are going to be the everyday unskilled workers who are tending those machines. And this is how society will change, because for the first time ever, we're going to have a solid middle class. And this is something, again, guys, that is still relevant in our society today. So I wanted you guys to get more of a sense of what this looks like. So again, we have this social hierarchy across all of the periods in AP World. So you had your, I use Europe here because it's much easier to envision, because we're kind of talking mostly about Europe right now. But yeah, you have this social hierarchy in period 1 where you had the king, the nobles at the top, and then you had the lowest classes of peasants. In period 2 is the same thing. You had the kings, the nobles, the knights, the top, and then you had the peasants, the farmers, okay? But that's all going to change in period 3, guys, because we now have 3 classes: the upper class, the middle class, and the working class. All right. So make sure you understand this change. Okay. We've got a continuity between period 1 and period 2, and we've got a change between period 2 and period 3. So some more changes that we see in society. The creation of this middle class actually creates something called the nuclear family. Now, I know most of you probably heard of this because it is a concept that we still occasionally see today. All right, the nuclear family is this idea where the father goes off to work in the morning. All right, the father is the breadwinner, the man, the person in the household that kind of brings home the bacon, right? Who's going out to work every day, leaving his wife and kids at home, working a paid job, and then returning at the end of the day. And because he's able to make, a certain amount of money that keeps this family, this livelihood in a good spot, his wife doesn't have to work. Okay. So the dad will be the breadwinner, and the mother usually stays at home and tends to the home and the children. Now, I know a lot of you might think that throughout history, this is what society looks like. Okay. Period 1, period 2. Women don't work. They stay at home and, knit and tend to their husbands. But that's not really true. Okay. Even in this class, we've talked about families, husbands and wives, often working side by side. So peasants, you see men and women, husbands and wives working in the fields together. Okay. Their children will be working with them. And so it's really not until period 3 that you see this distinction between the male goes off to work and the wife stays at home and tends to the house. okay? But to be clear, guys, this is just the middle class. The lower working classes cannot afford this, okay? The lower working classes, the wives cannot stay at home, okay? So what this is gonna do is that in the middle class, you're gonna see the firming of gender roles. So women stay at home. Women tend to be, the mother figures, taking care of the children, taking care of the homes, while the men tend to go off to work and bring home the bacon. All right. So gender roles are going to be kind of more firming up because of this change in society. Okay. I like this picture. I know it's a little bit later than period 3, 1750 to 1900, but I think it gives a good idea of what this nuclear family looks like. Dad goes off to work every day, wears a suit. All right. He doesn't see his children every day. That's another change. Okay. Mom stays at home and I guess bakes and knits and takes care of, little Susie and little Tommy. Now, that was just the middle class, guys, because in the working class, you're going to see something very, very different. Okay. The middle class, the husbands, the skilled laborers who go off to the factory and fix machines or manage the working class, they are able to bring home enough money so that their wives don't have to work. But that's not the same for the working class. Okay, these unskilled laborers are being paid next to nothing to work in these factories on these machines. Okay, so both women and children are required to go into the factories because they've got to keep their family, they've got to be able to support their family, they've got to be able to pay rent, they've got to be able to buy food for themselves. And the only way to do that is for the entire family, mom, dad, and all the children to go into the factories and work jobs. Now, I won't pretend that these jobs are, there's any sort of pros to these jobs. There's not. These factory jobs are horrific, okay? Not only is it monotonous, every single day, putting clothing through a machine over and over again, but we're talking about this unregulated capitalism. Remember, let's think back to Adam Smith. Adam Smith is saying that the only successful capitalist society is one in which the government does not step in, does not regulate anything. And what that means is that these factories are going to require more and more of their workers. So because the government is not stepping in, producing rules on the amount of time one can work or the age one can work by, you see women working, men and women and children working 20 hours a day, okay? You see small children not going to get an education, but working on these machines because they've got little fingers, okay? And these jobs are horrible. They're in these factories breathing whatever is coming out of these machines, okay? And it's just, it's not the kind of place you'd want to raise a family. It's not the kind of place you'd want to work every single day, okay? Factories don't have to give you a day off, all right? Some people are working 7 days a week, all right? They might work a 12-hour shift, go home, sleep for 8 hours, spend 4 hours with their children, and then have to go back to work. And again, they're in these factory environments where the government is not regulating the kinds of pollution that goes into the air. So women are breathing toxic chemicals, all right? Children are being exposed to toxic chemicals, fires, burning fingers, all right? If a child loses their hand in a machine, well, the government is not regulating what the factory owes that child, okay? The government does not say, okay, well, you have to give them this lump sum in this lawsuit. No, if a child loses their hand in a machine in a factory, the factory could blame the child and not have to do anything to help them, okay? And so society is going to change. It's going to get a little grimmer, okay? These people, these working class people who again, in period 1 and period 2 worked extremely hard on their farms, men and women and children working side by side. It's going to happen again in the factories, but it's going to be, under the idea of making money for, a boss. There's going to be no regulation whatsoever, okay? And things are going to be pretty grim. The life expectancy for these workers, okay, was 29 years old. 29. Think about that for a second, guys. Today, 29 is like the first half of your life. 29 was the average age that these workers lived because of the horrific stress they put their bodies through, the amount of chemicals and pollution they were surrounded by, the arduous tasks of cleaning these machines and fixing things. Okay. And that is one effect of this industrial revolution on society and this unregulated capitalism. Another one, guys, is child labor, which we sort of already talked about. So you guys don't have to write this down if you don't want to, but I do want you to understand what unregulated capitalism in conjunction with the industrial revolution does, okay? The concept of childhood is not really a thing in period 3, okay? So there's not this sort of idea that we owe our children a good childhood. But that being said, the idea of bringing a 6-year-old to a factory to work a 12-hour shift is pretty crazy to think about, okay? So child labor is not entirely new, because what you see in period 1 and period 2 is children are helping their parents in the fields, all right? Those peasants, they're having lots of babies in order to have that sort of extra help in the fields. But in period 3, child labor changes because, we no longer have these sort of groups of poor farmers who are working in the fields. Now these poor farmers are now poor factory workers working in these factories. They're dealing with someone else deciding the time of their shift. There's someone else deciding what exactly they're going to be doing. So yes, child labor is not entirely new, but the kind of child labor we see in period 3 is new. Okay. We see it on an industrial scale. All right. So the mass production of goods and the mass production of labor. So children are going to be put to work in these factories. And a lot of the times they're necessary. So cleaning some of these machines required tiny little hands to kind of go into the equipment and kind of clean things. Okay. But that being said, they were given long, inflexible work hours. So 12-hour shifts. All right. Think about like a 6-year-old working a 12-hour shift. I mean, I almost feel bad for the manager. But guys, remember, these work environments are extremely unhealthy and dangerous. Again, unregulated capitalism. The government is not coming in and telling factory owners that they need to, not produce toxic waste to poison their workers. I mean, they could do that. And so you're going to see a lot of children who are going to lose limbs. Lots of children lose fingers, limbs, legs. Children are killed in gas explosions because of this rampant pollution. They're going to be crushed under machines, and you'll see a lot of children burned in some way. Okay, child labor is not pretty. I know most of you are still working on your AP Lang, Florence Kelly rhetorical essay. So kind of think about this when you're writing or you're reading Florence Kelly's speeches, okay? So more changes in society, okay? Just when you think it couldn't get any worse, with little children losing their limbs in factories, it's gonna get worse. So for the first time in history, you're gonna see pollution becoming a major, major problem. Again, unregulated capitalism. The government's not going to come in and it's not going to tell a factory worker or a factory owner, you have to stop putting poisonous gas in the air, because in capitalism, you don't do that. Okay. So what's going to happen, guys, is that these factories are going to put toxic air into the atmosphere. Okay. They're going to be dumping harmful chemicals into water supplies where people will be drinking. Okay, so pollution is going to be a major, major problem in industrial cities. And it's not just the factories creating pollution. It's also the working class people. Okay, these working class people work all day, 12-hour shifts. Okay, and a lot of them have like one-room apartments paid for by the factory, of course. And most of the time they don't have any sort of sewage, nowhere to put their pee and poop. And so what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of these cities near factories, just people dumping their waste, their bodily waste in the streets, or they're going to be dumping their bodily waste in the same rivers where these toxic chemicals are going to be thrown. And you'll see cities that are just absolutely disgusting. London, Manchester, Birmingham, all those areas in the United Kingdom, those rivers that were so vital to the creation of factories are now going to be these disgusting toxic waste dumps, and people are still going to have to drink from them. That's what's crazy. So you're also going to see disease running rampant through these horrible industrial conditions. On top of that, guys, you're dealing with a level of poverty. Okay. People they're working these 12-hour shifts in the factories. They're horrible, menial jobs. And yet they're not being paid very much. Okay. They don't have to be paid very much. Again, no one is stepping in to tell the factory owners, maybe you should pay your people more. Just a thought. So what's going to happen is that these rapidly growing urban areas where all of these people are flocking in to find factory jobs, they're going to become centers of crime. Okay, people that are extremely poor are going to commit crime on each other. It's just what happens. Okay, when you're not being paid enough and you have to find food to feed your children. All right, poverty, poor housing. Okay, infrastructure. So if you guys, next time you go down to Bibb City and you see all those little shotgun houses, those were built by the mill owners for their employees. And those are nicer. Those are sort of the second industrial revolution. But that first industrial revolution, these housing that the employers built for their employees was terrible. Okay. No sewage, tiny 1-2 room apartments where people are basically living on top of each other. Okay. That's not exactly going to be good for, preventing disease. You also see this insufficient infrastructure. As I said, there's no sewage. Okay. There's not really many hospitals. There's not really schools. There's not roads that aren't covered in feces. Okay, the Industrial Revolution is not exactly a moment in history where we have clean and orderly cities. No. All right, we have factories that are pumping horrible toxic waste into the air and into the water. And people are living there, okay, because they have nowhere else to go, especially if they want to keep those jobs. So these problems are just caused by the amount of people flocking to these cities looking for jobs, okay? These former peasants that are now looking for paid work. The only place they can do this, and they're unskilled. They don't have the ability to manage or fix machines. So they're unskilled workers and they're flocking to these cities. And these cities are growing almost too fast, okay? They're not able to, build proper, safe infrastructure. And as I already said to you guys, you already wrote this down from my previous slide. These cities are just crime infested. Okay. The amount of poverty, the amount of this picture, I think it's a good picture. It shows you how disturbing and disgusting all this, people, these are waste baskets throwing their, bodily waste onto the streets. Okay. Dangerous area. And that is what's happening during the Industrial Revolution, especially to these urban areas. All right, guys. So I said this was a quick lesson, but I just wanted you to get the sense of sort of the problems of the Industrial Revolution. All right. So if you're watching this because you missed class, do send me an email so I can let you know what the rest of your classmates worked on today. Okay. This was a short lesson, but I wanted you to know this because I wanted us to build up to the ideologies that are going to be produced from this sort of level of morbid horror that we see coming out of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions, and if not, I'll see you guys in class.